The other area we want to take a look at in terms of challenges is scarce local funding. Now, this issue is not just germane to developing countries, because globally we know that accessing research funding is very competitive. But for developing countries, it often requires us to partner with developed countries or universities in high-income countries. So if you think about funding streams, for example, the Medical Research Council funding stream out of the UK, they often require you, rather than applying independently for a grant, to apply collaboratively with a primary applicant from the UK or from a UK university, outside of things like welcome fellowships. That's the usual method. Similarly, similar grants exist in the United States with the NIH, where you might have to partner with universities or institutions in these high-income countries, with few opportunities that exist that allow developing countries to apply on their own. One of the challenges we found is that very few developing countries may have such partnerships that already exist, that they can readily apply for these kind of grant funding when the calls come out for these grant to be applied for. And so what we have to recognize is that networking and partnership building is very important. And so to that end, one of the things we have found very useful is that attending Cochrane colloquiums and attending workshops put on by agencies that are affiliated with Cochrane, such as the Global Evidence Initiative, is very important, because that helps the developing country researcher to build well-needed partnerships to apply for grants that will see funding to do systematic review among other types of research. One of the particular things that I'd like to bring out to you is that within the current framework, and that is slowly changing, funding for a systematic review is very limited. And so you find very few agencies and funding agencies will provide or open a funding stream just for systematic reviews, unless these are commissioned or important systematic reviews to places like the World Health Organization. And so one of the things we have been doing in the Caribbean, and I suggest as a good thing to do in other developing countries, is to make effort to increase the awareness of the usefulness of systematic reviews to governments and academic institutions by offering training and sensitization workshop. And so once the stakeholders recognize the need, then they too will be able to join in the lobby for funding, or even provide funding for you to do systematic reviews that may well be needed to manage or to answer challenges that the government is having. So I go to our next example, and one of our other examples that we have worked on is the deworming and adjuvant intervention for improving the developmental health and well-being of children in low and middle income countries. And this systematic review was one that we had the pleasure of having funding from both the Canadian Institute of Health Research and the World Health Organization. And importantly, to be able to do the systematic review, we had to partner. So notice here, if you are into systematic reviews, if you've done systematic reviews, there are some persons here on this review that are very much in the systematic review world. So for example, Vivian Welch, who's now working with Campbell Collaboration, Howard White, former CEO, Peter Tugwell. And so working with these persons from developed countries enable us to conduct systematic review that are of very much importance to our setting, and we get them done through collaboration, as well as grabbing the opportunity for funding when those become available. So again, strategy to funding is collaborate, and network to build partnerships before the calls come, so that when the calls are available, the application can be made.